Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. Jeff Crowley. I'm here tonight with Chris Hockenfeld, my co-host. And tonight we're going to talk about a basketball family journey with Ainsley Tolson and her father, Brad Tolson. And we're really looking forward to some great stories about Bulldog basketball, Bulldog softball, and some college hoops. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation tonight. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, it's a whirlwind of sports going on, especially with the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl, baseball getting back ready to go with pitchers and catchers here in about 2 weeks, high school basketball in full swing, high school wrestling in full swing. And it's going to be a good time talking tonight to one of those special players that we had come across us at Trenton High School, and Ainsley Tolson, and all of her accolades and adventures of being a Lady Bulldog. One of the things you can compare with the Chiefs right now with what Ainsley did in high school was just that anticipation, that fever that the community gets into. That same kind of fever hit Trenton High School there for a 6 or 7 year stretch where it was just expected, like, hey, we're probably going to go to the Final Four again. We're probably going to be, in the championship game again. We're going to make noise. We're going to win districts. And that's a lot of pressure. But when you have the right athletes paired with the right coaches, paired with the right parent support, then magic happens. And that's kind of a similarity we see with the Chiefs and with sometimes high school sports.
Well, tonight we've got Brad and Ainsley Tolson. Their story is unique with highs and lows, mostly highs through Ainsley's sparkling high school sports career, including in softball and in basketball at Trenton High School and later in college basketball at William Jewell and 3 other small colleges over her 5 years of play. Throughout, she was a team and floor leader, becoming a 3-time All-State player in basketball, 1-time All-State softball pitcher for the Lady Bulldogs, leading her basketball team to 2 Final Four state championship appearances and her softball team to the state finals in her senior season. In college, she was highly successful at several stops, scored over 1,500 collegiate basketball points. Her dad, mom, brothers, and sisters were there for the entire ride, attending games throughout Kansas and Missouri, supporting her academic and sports efforts. Brad was one of several Trenton area basketball folks who dedicated countless hours to travel basketball coaching with Ainsley and her classmates. And their family story in basketball isn't quite over, with the youngest, Tolson, Kiefer, now breaking the school scoring record previously held by Ainsley. So we want to welcome you guys to the podcast. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's just really exciting for me to be here. I've started listening to all the podcasts, and I'm always struck by how it's just like being in the room visiting with a couple of my good friends, and now kind of because of Ainsley, here I am sitting in the room talking with a couple of my good friends in Ainsley. So looking forward to it. I wouldn't mind having a chair in the corner every week. So
well, we have a lot of fun in this room, and we hope that'll happen tonight. Ainsley, let's start with that family dynamic. What was your introduction to basketball? How did Chase, Lexi, your dad, your mom figure into that? I mean, what was your first exposure? I assume you were going to a lot of games when you were young.
Oh, yeah. A lot of games when I was younger. Before I answer that, I just want to say thank you for having me. I think this is an awesome opportunity, and I love listening to your podcast. And so just thank you for having me. It's so fun for me and my dad.
Thank you for
coming. But yeah, so how did I get started with basketball? Well, my older siblings, Chase and Lexi, played before. Right as I was born, I was already going to games and watching, so got exposed to it pretty young. But yeah, a lot of one-on-one games with Chase, a lot of just looking up to him and admiring him from the stands, and at home we'd play Nerf basketball, and it was just always a competition. So I have been competitive since I was able to walk, and yeah, a lot of watching him and his friends and his teammates play together. And I watched the girls that were older than me too, the Hurley sisters and the Whitakers, and oh man, there's so many people that I looked up to when I was younger. So just growing up and watching them and just chasing them and what they were doing and trying to be as successful or better than them was just really fun for me. So yeah.
So you knew that was your path. When you go to the gym and it's full and there's energy and everybody's going crazy, the team wins, it's like, why wouldn't you want to be part of that? If you're a kid, that's the ultimate.
Exactly. I loved watching Chanel Pash and Aubrey Utley with softball. I just looked up to them so much. And the energy that was on the field, like you said, it was so fun to watch. And I just dreamed of being in those big time games with everyone there and just excitement and fun.
Now, I'm sure you started in some Y-ball kind of things and just some basic things and getting exposure. I don't know if you played, what do they call that? wasn't Pee Wee basketball. What was the name they gave it down there in Chillicothe? It was like
Itty Bitty basketball.
Itty Bitty basketball. How could I forget that? Itty Bitty basketball. And all the parents are watching the game like it's a real competition, like it's actually basketball being played in front of them, yelling and all that kind of stuff. But it just kind of gets into your blood and you're ready to roll. And then you get to that 4th and 5th grade level, and it's all of a sudden there's some other opportunities to play ball, and your dad steps in and travel ball becomes a part of your life for the next 3 or 4 years. Talk about that, and you talk about that too, how you put the team together and what you had done maybe with Chase's group and coming up.
For sure. I remember the first time that I coached here at Trenton. Chase had played some YMCA ball at Chillicothe, and he had played with some Chillicothe kids and stuff, but we knew that he was going to come to high school here, and we wanted him to start playing with some of the kids here. And so we had started having some of those teams here and coaching with those. And I can remember meeting with some of the parents that were his age, specifically remember Quentin and Becky Albright and how kind they were. And through my youth coaching journey, so many people here, especially when you think about the group that Ainsley had, they were busy doing their own coaching. And so I was able to be like the only guy that was available to coach, all of these high school and college coaches' children. And they were all so kind and tolerant, of me. But some of the early memories that I have of Ainsley and her group, one thing that I remember is being at one of Chase's practices, and Ainsley was a lot younger. And while I was trying to coach Chase's group, Ainsley would come up and tap me on the arm, and she'd be like, what can I do, Dad? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And so I would say, go dribble around the court with your right hand on the line. And then she'd come back and tap me on the arm. What do you want me to do now? Well, do it with your left hand. Okay. Come back. What do you want me to do now? Okay, dribble around the free throw line and dribble all the lines and the circles, and then, then come back and do it the other way. And then it was always, what do you want me to do next, Dad? What do you want me to do next, Dad? And that really carried through all the way into college for her. She was always trying to become a better player. And it didn't take her a super, super long time to get past what I could teach her, but she was always really kind to go ahead and give me an opportunity to give my 2 cents, whether it was useful or not. So on the early teams, the first teams that I remember her playing on were some of those itty bitty ones, but Howie Lynch and I coached the group of girls with Sydney and Salem and Taylor and Micah and that group. I mean, Micah might not have been there on the very, very beginning because they didn't move here until later, but a lot of those girls played together from when they were like 5 or 6 years old in the Y League, and Howie was involved. And then when they were in 3rd and 4th grade, Steve Richmond got involved. And then by the time we were in 5th and 6th grade, we were not playing in the Y League anymore. We were traveling 2 hours away. And so it was a really unique path and just a lot of fun.
I remember going and watching one of Howie's practices when I was thinking about doing this. You guys knew how to run practices. And by that point, I was watching somebody that had done this for years. And I thought, can I do this? I think I can, but you had to watch how they structured it, how they made it fun, how they kept people engaged and involved. So I'm a sucker for dad-daughter things. I mean, Kendall got me involved in all sorts of sports, track and tennis and the like. But in basketball, I was the one trying to hook her and get her involved. And there were times when she said, Dad, I don't love basketball the way you do. I like it. And we had to find that balance point. So did you ever have those times with your dad when you go, Dad, I already know that? Or, the dad coach thing, sometimes he's dad, sometimes he's coach.
Yeah, I think I loved basketball. I just love sports. And so I will say my dad did a really good job about keeping that balance of being dad and being coach. He told me when I was really little that if I ever wanted to go to the gym, to just ask, and he would say yes, and he would go with me. But he never forced me to go. He left me the opportunity to ask him and invite him to come with me, and I wanted to go with him because I learned something new every day that I got to go to the gym with him. So he instilled the hard work ethic in me, I think, and I just learned a lot from him, and I loved every second of going to the gym with him, and I would go back to the gym right now if I could with him. So
That's great. That's great. My dad was a principal, and he always had the keys to the gym. And if I heard about a boiler that went down or some air conditioning issue, Dad, can I go? Can I shoot while you were working in the school when I was a little kid? And I love that. And you've had some of that kind of experience as well.
Yeah. And it goes in stages. Like you just have to get in the gym. That's the first part, right? Is get in the gym. You can worry about practice plans later. You can worry about the drills you're going to run, but you got to find a way to get in the gym. And then you got to share that with the people that you want to coach and be with. Is let's find a way to get in there, because that's the only way we're going to be good, is put the time in the gym. And then from there, it just blossoms. Like we used to have teams cycling through the gyms on weekends, practicing for Y ball or different teams, traveling teams. And they just had that kind of hunger. Like we're only going to get better if we go in and practice and get in the gym. And these two are a great example of that. Always in the gym, always trying to get better. You're not going to get better by sitting around talking about it getting better. The only real way to do it is to get in the gym and shoot 1,000 jump shots, or work on how you're going to pass, or work on dribble drills. And so a testament to just good old fashioned, let's get it done. Let's find a way to get better.
Brad, you and I had a conversation when I was getting ready to set up my travel team, and we knew that they needed an opportunity to play and get on the court and be challenged, so that when they came up into high school, they would be a good piece to fit in with Ainsley's class and really be something special. You gave me some advice. Pick your players for the parents. You got to have parents that can get their kids there with 2 shoes on their feet and on time and are going to be supportive of what you're trying to do. And you made that point to me. Luckily, there were a lot of parents in Trenton that fit that bill. And I'm sure that you had this experience too. We would go to tournaments and we'd go up into Iowa, or we'd go over to St. Joe or Moberly or down into the city. And there would be more Trenton people at the game than for the home teams.
We've always had incredible support. And, I mentioned some of the coaches that we had that were parents on our group and grandparents, with Max Mothersbaugh. And I doubt if there was ever a weekend where we didn't, unless one of them was coaching where both parents weren't there, at all of the things that we did with softball and basketball. And it was really a year-round affair. Yeah, we were really blessed to have parents that were that bought into. They basically dedicated their whole everything to that. They'd go to work in the day, and then there'd be some sort of sport that night, whether it was school sport or travel sport, and it was a year-round thing. Ainsley and I were talking about how there was really no time to sit around and reflect about what you'd done, because the next thing was next, and that happened for such a long period for her. It was always what's next. It's not what did we do, but like, what are we going to do next?
What other youth coaches do you recall, or people that made you want to learn from them?
Yeah, there was a lot, and I'm so blessed with the people that I got to learn from. Like my dad was saying, Max Mothersbaugh, he was my pitching coach, but he was also at our basketball games, and I learned a lot from him, and he was always so encouraging and kind. And I'm a player that I like praise, and I like oh, good job, Ainsley. Like, I don't like to get yelled at very much. And Max was he was so good with me from such a young age. And then all of the parents of my best friends were coaches. So how lucky was I to get to learn from them? But I got the Croy, Jenny and Wes, and then Micah's parents, Tracy, helped me with softball, and Ched coached our middle school basketball team, and Steve was at our practices when we were going to Pirates games. And it was just, we were around it all the time. So even if we weren't playing, we were watching somebody's parents coach, and it was just, we just loved it. We couldn't get enough of it. So I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, but Cowling in high school and Upton and all of my college coaches and my family members, it was just, I was always around it. So I was very blessed, very, very lucky.
The thing I remember about those days, and I'm sure you have some of this too, was the hair braiding, the raiding the concession stands, the let's go warm up in the hallway 15 minutes before the game kind of stuff. You're there all day, and you might play 3 or 4 games. A lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of memories in those waiting moments too. And I think I might be going backwards a little bit, but when my group, we got to watch those older teams that I was talking about with softball and the basketball teams when we were in Itty Bitties. We weren't even in middle school yet, but we got to watch them play. And we were just so excited to be there and to watch them. And we just couldn't wait to play. Like, we just wanted to compete so bad that when we got that opportunity, we were so ready and so excited for it.
Really hard not to jump around, Jeff, but I can't go on without, thinking about the groups behind Ainsley and their contributions that they made throughout the high school stuff, guys like you keeping it going. It seemed like Chris was talking about every grade we had a basketball team, and every grade or two we had a softball team going to tournaments in Kansas City on the weekends. And when you think about some of the contributions, I can remember like Michaela coming in and taking a charge at the end of a district championship game, and I can remember her coming in at like a state quarterfinal game and pitching when Ainsley got hit by a ball and broke her finger, and Lexi Whitaker hitting 2 home runs over the fence, and Macy Moore, arguably one of the best basketball players, best athletes in Trenton history, was part of that group. I think sometimes the younger girls that, were a little bit behind this group get overshadowed, but their contributions to the success through those years were huge. Even just having a great group, they were a great group to challenge the older group and practice every day was a huge benefit.
I always used to tell, and sometimes the girls don't know how to compare themselves. I used to tell Kendall, I go, the second string of the Trenton Bulldogs would finish at least third in the GRC. That's how good they were. And, that's what was fun to watch, because you never know who's going to be what when they're 4th, 5th, 6th graders.
But you know when you know, right? I can remember a story that I have with Ainsley, and it was I was helping cover an open gym, and sometimes we'd have open gyms, and this is going to be when you were just coming out of being an 8th grader. And so you're an 8th grader, and we had an open gym, which my daughter was involved in for the upcoming basketball season the next year. And they're scrimmaging, and I'm watching the open gym, and of course, there's basketballs bouncing, there's a gym with lights on, and here comes Ainsley and a couple girls peeking their heads into the open gym. And I said, well, come on, this high school open gym, and do you think we can get in there? And I said, all right, just get in there, run with them, see what happens. Why not? And they got in there, and then immediately, about 5 minutes, I thought, oh man, here we go. I mean, they already belong, especially Ainsley was playing with those high schoolers, just having the time of her life, not thinking, I don't think, that, oh my gosh, I'm playing against, juniors and seniors. It was just, I'm playing basketball. It was really cool to watch that you knew it was going to work, that it was going to click. And when those girls got their chance, kind of, ready for the baton to be passed to them, they took full advantage. And of course, here we are saying later, they did all those great things.
And they were always challenged. I mean, you guys laid a lot of tough competition. They say if you schedule kids, you want to finish about 500. They need to win enough, but they don't need to dominate. They got to get better, so they got to face those challenges. And I know you guys did that.
There was one winter, I think it was probably before our 8th grade year, played in Kansas City, and Max Mothersbaugh was a big believer in that and talking about scheduling up and, playing as hard a competition as you could. And so we'd been doing pretty good, and we scheduled a whole bunch of the Eclipse and Lachatte's and several other organizations played in, which to us at the time, me being out here in Trenton, I just thought they were just teams like us, kind of, only, kind of maybe all-star kind of teams from schools in Kansas City. And it turns out that all of those girls ended up being people that we saw later on when Ainsley played college basketball. We were talking about how after a tournament, nobody knew who we were, and they would come up and say, where are you all from? And we would be like, we're from Trenton. They would be like, Trenton, and Trenton, Missouri. It's a little town up in north central Missouri. And then they would ask, well, where are all the girls from? And we would say, Trenton. And they would be like, oh, and it was only then that we kind of started to get, like, this is going to be pretty cool.
What was your favorite sport? I mean, were you just into softball when it was softball season? You weren't. I mean, I know you worked on that enormously. I mean, was it hard for you to choose which of those sports was your favorite?
It was. I always just tell everybody that they were both my favorite. And I know that's not a good answer, but they were, because I just couldn't decide. And both were year round for me, because I pitched year round and I shot year round. So sometimes I would forget what season I was in, but it was fun. And yeah, I loved both so much that when I was at Jewell for 2 years, I had played basketball there for my freshman and sophomore year. And my 3rd year, I was looking to transfer, and I actually filled out the softball form on Avila's website just to see if maybe they would look at my high school stats and see if they would pick me up just to like play for fun, maybe just walk on or whatever. And I got to go on a visit for softball there, and I ended up playing both. And that was just so fun for me. And it was so exciting because I miss softball so much. But it's hard to play both sports, but if I could have done it for 5 years, I would have done it.
I know you loved, and as a softball pitcher, I mean, they go to the bump and then the next day they're back out there. So you were used to having people point at you and you're in the game. You had so many highs, but you had lows too. I mean, you had injuries, summertime injuries. You had tough losses, teams that were hard to climb over. In the softball world, you really had that arc where Lathrop was kind of in the way of you getting to where you wanted, and then you got nipped by Hamilton. And you get to your senior year. Did you know you were going to get over the hump your senior year?
I talked to Cowling about this a few weeks ago, I think, but I told him that my senior year, I was so confident in my team. I just knew that we were going to win. Every game that we went into, I was like, we're winning this game. And I remember when we got to Lathrop in softball, some of my teammates were a little bit like, oh, I don't know. And, my mom, I love my mom to death, but she was like, well, Lathrop has gotten you guys before almost every year. And I'm like, yeah, but I believe in this team. Like, I just know we can do it. And she knew it too. She just had to keep me in check. I just remember going through the halls that day of high school, and the girls were nervous and tense. And I was like, guys, we got this. I mean, look at our lineup and tell me where the dip is, because there isn't one. And I remember warming up that game, talking to Salem. She was like, are you feeling good? Like, what do you think? Like, do you think we're going to win? And I was like, yeah, we're going to win. I just know it. And we were just a really competitive bunch. And yeah, from leadoff to ninth batter, I mean, there was so much skill there. And like Dad was saying, I mean, our backups were better than a lot of the teams we played. And that's just it was such a blessing to get to play with all of them. And everybody was bought in. A lot of times with girls teams, and especially high school, with all the recognition that we were getting, there can be a lot of jealousy and a lot of tension, but I was just so blessed. All of the girls were on board and wanted to win and would do whatever it took. If it was pitching one inning or laying down a bunt and sacrificing yourself, everybody was just so bought in. And it was so fun to play for a team like that.
That game was at home, correct?
Yes.
That was a quarterfinal game. Sometimes it came around and you got to host, and that was a huge game. That field out there has hosted quite a few big games. That might be one of the biggest ever. That was fun. 5-2, was that the score of that game?
It was a fun game, yeah.
No, you won that game, obviously. But I just remember, you're pitching, the good overall running and defense, and then somebody would hit a bomb. I mean, you got a lot of players on that team that could.
Yeah, and you never know when it was coming either, because I hit a few home runs, Salem would hit home runs, Sydney would hit home runs, Lexi Whitaker would hit home runs, and Macy Moore would hit a lot of home runs, and you just never know like who was gonna hit one. And that's another thing. I remember talking to Salem before games. We would warm up and we'd be like, what do you think? How do you think this game is gonna go? And defensively, I was so confident. I mean, Micah at third made every play, and Macy at short, and our outfield was good. And I had so much confidence in our defense. So most of the time it was, if we can hit, we're fine. And I mean, like I said, our whole lineup, we could all hit. So yeah, it was fun. It was a fun year.
You made it to the championship game, went to extra innings, came up one run short of winning the championship. I mean, what did you take out of that? I mean, you've got to getting to a championship game, highest level that a Trenton team has ever done it twice. You want the championship, I'm sure. Very disappointed. At the same time, you guys absolutely held up and gave them everything and took it to extra innings. What were your feelings coming out of that?
Oh, I was heartbroken, of course, because I wanted to win so bad. And just knowing that we all were committed for so long and put so many hours and so much blood, sweat, and tears into the game, I wanted to win so bad. But yeah, I've had a hard time with that. I still have dreams about that game and still wish I would have thrown a different pitch or, stepped on third with my outside foot instead of my inside foot. And I think about those types of things all the time. But as time has gone on, I've just realized what a blessing it was that we got to be in that situation in the first place, and the people that got to be there and Howie was there. And I mean, that stuff all means more to me than the outcome of that game. And yeah, obviously it would be great to have that state championship banner up in the high school, but nothing beats the memories that I had. And yeah, I of course I think about that game a lot, and I wish that it could be different, but it was fun. It was fun.
Trust me that when I say this, that as we all sit around here, we've all got that game. I've got that game, and I'm a lot older than you, and I've got a game back in my memory banks that I still dream about it and wake up in cold sweats. But again, it's the journey, all the memories you guys got to get to that point. And that game, what a game. One of the best games I've ever been to or witnessed. I mean, big players making big plays. And the only way you lose is by probably the best hitter in the state facing the best pitcher in the state at the end of a game. I mean, just incredible. So yeah, that was a fun ride all the way from start to finish that softball season.
Macy's home run kind of reminded me of that Alex Gordon home run in Game 1 of the World Series. It's like you didn't expect it. It's the bottom of the inning. What are we going to do? How are we going to manufacture a run? And then boom.
It was awesome. I think about that game all the time. Even just like all the little things that I think about. I mean, should I have tried to bunt? Like, it just seemed like, I don't know what it looked like from the outside perspective, but we would just go and keep going and keep going. And that game just felt forever long. And I was always ready to pitch. I was always like, I got this. Like, I can go 20 innings. Like, I can do this. But hitting was just like, oh my gosh, I got so tired of going in that box with everybody watching me. And I was like, should I try to bunt this time? But this could be my last at bat. Like, what if I get a hit? What if I get a double? And I mean, Coach Cowling was an amazing coach, and he trusted us, which is why we were so good and why our relationship was so good with him. But yeah, he told me, I mean, I could do whatever I wanted up there. So I go around and around in my head. But I remember, I think it was maybe the 10th inning, and leadoff was up. So I was up, and Macy was our third batter, and she came up to me and was like, just get on base. I will hit you around, just get on base. And so she had that confidence. I mean, we all still had that confidence. It was a long game, and we got tired. And I mean, not to mention that other team was good. Like, they were that wasn't just a regular high school team. They had 2 D1 players, and they were good. So it was just fun to be in that moment and just be so excited.
Dad, how do you're the fan, you're wishing for the very best. You're heartbroken too. And then your daughter comes up to you. What's the dad's role there?
Oh, wow. That's a really big question. What's the dad's role? But no, if any player blames himself when you think about all the work that went into it. But I sometimes think about folks remember the 3 or 4 games during their high school career where it was like a moment that everybody thought that they probably could have won, but they didn't. I know that everybody appreciates, and I'll never forget all of the support that we've had through the years, all the people that came to watch them all the way through. And I think about how many teams that we sent home with that feeling. We've got maybe 2 or 3 of those games where we're like, that was one that we wish we would have got. You know, maybe we would have went to another couple Final Fours, or maybe we'd have a banner hanging on the wall. But there's about 30 or 40 or 50 of those games that we sent everybody else home, and it's the one that they remember. And so sometimes I think about it that way. And then after that game has happened, I think back to, as you watch sports going forward, you know, like Chris said, everybody's got that game, but it's not just a high school girls softball game. It's like an NFL game. It's an NBA game. It's stuff where you've got guys getting paid $30 million a year and making mistakes that we would have never thought that our girls would make, you know. And so it's kind of interesting to look back on it. I remember the moments after the game and the heartache that Ainsley had and that I had for her, but I'm nothing but proud of that group, and I never could be anything else.
I'd like to add that, I mean, he was very supportive after the game, of course, but so was everyone else. And I remember that game specifically, I felt like it was my fault entirely because I gave up the home run. I supposedly didn't step on third. I think I did, but that it just felt like my fault. The changeup that went by Salem, I mean, it was my pitch. And so that whole game, it just felt like it was my fault entirely. And that is what hurt the most because I wanted it so bad for my team. And I felt like it was all my fault. And that's the thing about softball. It's a team sport, but there's a lot of individual stuff that goes on. So it was a heavy loss for me. But I just remember after the game ended, I was like so scared of what people were going to say. People were going to be like, "Oh, Ainsley just had a terrible game and that's why they lost." And that is not what happened at all. The entire town was so supportive of me, and they were just so kind and told me, I mean, great game, great season. We wouldn't be here without you. And I remember getting on Facebook, seeing zoomed in videos. People had been at the game, but they bought the game, went back, zoomed in on third, and they were recording that I stepped on third and posting it and saying, she did. We should have won this game. They should have a ring right now. And that was just, I mean, that made everything just so much better. It could have been a lot worse, but the support from the town was just unbelievable.
So the rumors that your dad didn't give you a ride home, not true.
Not true at all. I think he might have bought me ice cream, actually. So
Good for him. Good for him. Okay, in basketball, you started quick. You came in, you were a 4-year starter. Sophomore year, you helped take your team to the Final Four with some senior leadership from Whitley, Richmond, and your teammates, your classmates were the core of that team, with Ashton Whitaker as the only junior, I think, that really played a big role. And you guys were sophomores, and Whitley was the key senior. I remember going to the Kansas City Southeast game, and that was one of those games, like I said, do we have enough points? You know, it was a very low-scoring game and a really physical. Talk to me about that quarterfinal win that took you to the Final Four.
that was so fun. That was one of those games that we had dreamed since we were little to be in. I remember when we got to that game, we were like, who are these girls that we're playing? We've never heard of this team before. And we were nervous. We were so excited, though. We were just so excited that everybody was coming to support us and got to play in a really nice gym. And it was a lot of fun. That's what I remember the most. I remember Whitley was always the life of the party, of our team. She was always the excitement and brought the energy. And she just was ready to fight. She was just ready to win. She would do whatever it took. And that led our entire team. We were all fearless because she was our fearless leader. And so it was a lot of fun to play with her. And she was so skilled and such a great teammate to me. So we had a lot of fun.
That was the first breakthrough game for that group of winning not just a big game, but the game. I mean, that was the game that gets you to the Final Four, the game that gets you to play the best of the best. And I remember the game before when we won which would be the sectional game down at Lawson, that we were all, talking, standing around, and a couple of us had our phones out, expecting Boonville, who had been ranked 1 or 2 all year, to be the team that we were going to have to play to get to the Final Four. And then it came across, some of us started to whisper, and did you see your phone that this Kansas City Southeast team just upset Boonville, and they're the team that we're going to have to beat? And then that started this whole, how good are they? They beat Boonville. Who are they? How do they play? And all of that, drama leading up to that game, which was one of the greatest games I've ever, that was one of the greatest basketball games I ever watched, because it was so back and forth and both teams got out of their comfort zone a little bit. And, we were a high scoring team that liked to run and score points. And they obviously were a physical team that liked to play in the 30s, but our girls adjusted, won the game. And I can still picture that mob coming onto the court after they won, because they won the big game to get to the Final Four.
I remember that as well. And I think there was a loose ball scramble late in that game. They would have had a shot that could have taken us down, and we just didn't let them have it. You remember anything from that game?
Yeah, the build up to that, I think that Lathrop had a good team. There was no guarantee that we were going to get out of districts that year. It was a big, question mark. The Hewitt girl was a really nice player and had scored a lot of points, and they were a bigger school that played a tougher schedule maybe than us. And there were no guarantees that we were going to get out of that, but we thought if we get out of this game, we've got a good chance against Lawson, if I remember right, and the team that we'd played before and had success. And then the actual game against KC Southeast, I was like, Chris, that it starts, at the end of that Lawson game, Boonville had been a team that had beat Chillicothe the year before, or sophomore year, maybe even that year, kind of beat the team that was a team that we had trouble beating, a really, really good Chillicothe team. And so I thought it was ironic when we found out that Boonville lost, we were like, yes, and not even really maybe taking into account that it was a pretty dang good team if they beat Boonville, which they were. And it was one of those cases where we actually overcome a KC Southeast had a D1 girl on their team, and she was incredible. And a couple of, you remember certain plays. I remember kind of the theme of the game. I thought early on KC Southeast was going to come out and try to pressure us, and we went through it, and they backed into a zone really quick. And then I thought Coach Upton was really wise, and we worked around their zone really well, and it turned into like just a blow-by-blow game, like Chris said. But I remember a late three in the corner that Ainsley hit, and then the most memorable play to me of the game was the charge that Ainsley took late in the game. The best player on the other team coming down the court one-on-one, and Ainsley gets in position and just flat out takes a charge, textbook, charge take, and it was a really, really big moment in the game. And then the last thing that I remember, and I think I can't tell this story, be a better story for Ainsley, but from sitting in the crowd, it looked like at the moment that we knew that we were going to win the game, and Ainsley knew that we were going to win the game, it was almost like she hit her knees and was going to say a prayer or something. But I think there's a whole other story around what that was really about. But it was a fun moment. She bounced the ball hard 2 or 3 times and then clutched her fist and went down to her knees, and it was the biggest win that maybe Trenton girls basketball, one of the biggest wins, that we've had.
Yeah, that game.
So now we have to know. Now we have to know what the rest of the story.
Oh, that game was just like a roller coaster for our team. I remember at halftime, we were just like, we didn't know what was going to happen. And it's just weird to think that way, because when we would play our other games in high school, when we would play around here, we were usually pretty confident about, we were going to win. And this is one of those games that we were like, we don't know what's going to happen. And so it was so nerve-wracking, and we were just so excited. Yeah, the charge, I remember fearing my life, because she was tall and strong, and I was like, somebody's got to do it. So I did it, and Whitley, I remember she picked me up and was just like smiling ear to ear, and I was like, please tell me he called a charge and not a foul. And he did, and she was so excited for me, and that just speaks to her leadership. I mean, she didn't care who was going to get the credit. She just wanted to win, and that was so fun. But yeah, the end of the game, I remember, I think our crowd was cheering and doing some type of Trenton cheer, and we just like couldn't believe that we were going to go to state. Like it seemed so far away from us. We didn't think that was like a possibility, but we had put so much time and effort into the game, just into basketball and into each other, and we were just so excited. And I just remember, like, I don't know what to do with myself. I mean, I could either run 5 laps around the gym right now, or I could go to my knees and just, brace myself, because Whitley was running straight for me, and I was like, let's try not to get hurt. So I just went straight for the ground, and yeah, it was one of my favorite memories of high school.
It's like a Patrick Mahomes moment after the Super Bowl last year when he hit the ground. He just ran around. He didn't know what to do, so he just fell down because it's so overwhelming.
Body was just shaking. I just remember, like, I don't know what to do. So I was just so excited.
That's great.
One of the best things about that game was that it was the one we weren't really expecting that one at all. It wasn't like everybody thought, they're probably going to go to the Final Four. It was like just so unexpected. I mean, nobody at the beginning of the year was like, this is a Final Four team. So that was part of what made it so fun, was it was just all new and exciting.
Yeah, and if you remember, we had the bad streak about winning districts. I mean, we couldn't win our district. We had to beat Lathrop first, and then once that glass was shattered, it was all fun from there on out. We were kind of the underdog. I remember a couple things about that game. One was Trenton traveled crazy good, of course, like a lot of small towns do at that time. It's probably 50-1, 100-1. Trenton fans to Southeast fans, they packed out Lee Summit Gym. And the other thing I remember is their little point guard who launched one from the top of the key straight on and banked in a 3. And usually, if you've been around basketball long, you think, oh my gosh, that's it. That's a sign that we're probably not going to win this game when the other team is banking in 3s. But that was one of the last 3s they hit, I think. They ended up missing a couple big 3s late in the game, and we won.
I remember playing in the Hearn Center in the semifinal game. We fought hard, but ultimately we had to succumb in that game. And then we had the third place game, and that was a really tight game. You had a good game. Whitley had a really good game, 18-10. You were playing against another D1 player that played at Mizzou. You lost that game. But what I remember about it, and my daughter walked in as part of that, was the press conference with Whitley. And the feeling that you guys had as a team, and the appreciation for her leading your team. And that was just very emotional. And as parents, I remember out in the hallway, that was a good moment. In that final moment, you guys showed the teamwork and the love that you had for your teammate.
Yeah, Whitley was a great leader for our team. She was always just so aggressive and just a fun player to play with. I mean, basketball is a long season and it's hard to show up every day and give your 100% effort, but she was just the energy. I mean, she just brought it every single day, and that's what it takes to take a team that far. And so, yeah, she was awesome, and there was a whole lot of love on that team for her. She made everybody laugh every single day. And
I think your quote was, "We're not just a team, we're sisters."
Yeah, we were. And I mean, that's a lot of time in the gym together. And so, yeah, and I mean, she was Taylor's older sister too. So we had all, I mean, grown up with Whitley. She was all of our big sisters. So she was awesome.
So junior year doesn't turn out quite the same. You're on the path and all of a sudden lose in the regional final in a tough game in overtime. And now what's this legacy of this group going to be? And you come back for your senior season again. I'll ask you the same question I asked you in softball. I mean, did you know you were getting over the hump your senior year?
I don't know. I just remember, I mean, that confidence. I just always felt confident in my team. I mean, even that game at Hamilton, we were down maybe 18 at one point, and I was still like, we're going to win this game. I mean, yeah, we're down 18 in the third quarter or whatever, but I still had that confidence, and it just carried over into the next season. I mean, when you give all of your effort in the summertime, and you put the hours in and you put the hard work in, you get to have that confidence. That's your kind of reward. And so that, to me, I mean, I knew that all of my teammates were doing as much as they could to get better every single summer, and that to me was enough to have confidence for the next year.
The next thing I'm going to point to, the St. Pius quarterfinal game that got you back to that Final Four, seemed like that was you in full flower. I mean, you had one of the greatest games of your life, I think, and you ran the show and hit all the free throws and just took that team on your back. And that game was tight. I mean, it doesn't look like it when you look at a final score of 50-35, but it's a 5-point game going in the fourth quarter. St. Pius was pretty rugged. It took a lot of plays in that fourth quarter to close out that game.
Yeah, they were a great team. When Dad was talking earlier about girls that we saw in the summertime, a lot of them were on that team. I knew some of them because I just remembered them from playing them when we were younger. Yeah, that was a really tough game for us. Another one that we were kind of nervous about, but still, just for some reason, we just knew that we were gonna pull it off. We started out in man, and Coach Upton made the decision to go zone and play our monster defense. I remember when he said that, I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to go. And I usually didn't doubt Coach Upton because he usually knew what to do. But I remember that at that moment, I was like, I don't know. But I mean, we weren't the type to argue about it. We were going to do it if our coach told us to do it. So we did, and that made all the difference. And then my team was just full of ball players. And there's a difference between playing basketball and being a basketball player. And we had so many girls that just knew what to do. Micah made a lot of great finishes at the beginning of that game, and Salem was just a strong, steady person that we could count on. Sydney was a rebounding machine, and Macy could score anytime if you just give her the ball, and she'll catch anything too, so it wasn't hard to do that. Yeah, I remember that team specifically because there wasn't a whole lot of other basketball teams our age that seemed to have that confidence that we kind of had, and the team aspect, like they were fighting for each other and they were like excited for each other, and they might have been just as loud as our team, and our team was loud. So I remember that was a really fun game to be in because both teams wanted it so bad, and we got to be on top of that game, but that was a great team.
I remember about that game is the composure. It just seemed like every time St. Pius would come at our girls, they would respond. They would keep that little cushion. They were never bothered. They made free throws down the stretch. They did all the little things in a close game that you need to do. And that's because they had been seasoned, right? You win some games, you lose some games. They had won big games, they had lost big games, but they had been there. And so nothing rattled them all the way to the Final Four again.
It was an electric environment. I remember that.
Yeah, the St. Pius girls, and I thought their coach did a really good job. They really played downhill as a group. They were just kind of running at us when we were in our man-to-man and just kind of running into us and making contact. And the girls hadn't played monster defense, I don't think all year, but they'd had 3 years of it before that. Coach Upton went, into his bag of tricks there, and the girls had played it so much that they knew it, and it wasn't something that could have been scouted because we hadn't shown it all year, and it really, really made a big difference. Micah Hurley she was a big game player. I remember, the finishes that you were talking about, Ainsley, and I don't remember exactly the details, but I know that around the end of the first quarter, we'd gotten behind a little bit, and maybe you made a 3 at the end of the quarter, or maybe Micah did, and then we came out and made another 3, and then all of a sudden, the whole quarter that they had maybe had the advantage of was wiped out, and it was just blow for blow from that point on, and I think late in the game, you got to have a little bit of fun. They were getting a little frantic, and you were able to drive in and do what you probably really like to do the most. You were able to set up a few of your teammates, and I remember you going across the front of the crowd, and Jenny Croy and some of her family specifically sitting down on the front, and Ainsley pumping her fist, and how excited the crowd was. And that whole side of the building was just filled with Trenton fans. It was electric and something that I'll never forget.
And I'm not just bragging about the game you had. You had 24 points. You guys held them to 4 field goals in the final 3 quarters. 4 field goals. That's crazy. And you were 15 for 15 from the free throw line. I know your dad appreciates that.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure there was
Is
a
that
lot
good?
That's pretty good.
I think that's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Oh, Dad and I would go, oh my gosh, if there was a number on how many free throws we would shoot when we would practice at the NCMC gym, it would be a really big number. So yeah, that was props to Dad.
You finished your career with 1,685 points. Your teammates and you won 101 games in 4 years, lost only 14 times. I know those are painful, but you only lost 14 times. That's crazy. All district, all state, 2-time KMZU Player of the Year. Pretty good stuff. Now, you finished that part, and you had some decisions to make. What were the decisions that you made? What was the recruiting process like, and what pointed you to the William Jewell Cardinals?
The recruiting process was really tricky. That's one of those things that if you don't have someone that knows what they're doing, it can be really confusing. I remember junior year summer, maybe, I had already verbally committed to playing at Columbia College, and I got hurt, and I decided I wanted to do nursing instead of whatever I wanted to do when I committed there. And I was just so young, and I just remember, they were in the heart of Columbia, and it was a Nike school, and it was really cool and bigger than Trenton. And I was like, yeah, sign me up. And I went ahead and gave them I'll come here. And it's a lot more than that. There was a lot more going on than I realized. Yeah, I didn't really know what I was doing when it came to the recruiting process, but I remember going to Truman camps, and I really liked Coach Egan. A full circle moment. She actually helped me in my last year of college after I got done at Baker. I reached out to her and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, should I try to transfer and go somewhere that I'm not going to play very much, but be a part of a really good program? Or should I go somewhere and play and try to get my education done? Like, what do I do? And she gave me great advice, and she's just an all-around great coach. And I wish I would have gotten to play for her. But yeah, I had talked to her before I committed to Columbia, and she ended up finding another player when I committed to Columbia College. And so then that kind of left me with, do I want to try to reach out somewhere and play softball? I think I had Park University was an option, and maybe some others, but that wasn't on my mind when I was in high school. I was wanting to win state. And so I didn't really care about getting recruited. I didn't really even think about it until it was, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. Dad, you probably remember more than I do about how I got to Jewell, but it just kind of landed in my lap, I think.
Yeah, honestly, it involved Coach Egan. When you decided that you didn't want to go to Columbia, we reached back out to Coach Egan, and she was like, well, I've already filled their spot, but these are some places that I think that be a good fit. William Jewell being one of those, and your mom and I were in favor of you being someplace close to home, and so that's where it ended up being. It's funny how it all works out. I remember when Ainsley I was asking her the questions, about what are you looking for in your college experience? She said, I want to meet a lot of people and see a lot of things. And so, the winding path that all took, she was able to, start at 4 different colleges and have a lot of different coaches and different teammates and see different cultures and different tactics and different places. And so it ended up, I think, working out the way that it was supposed to, even though it's not something that we would have ever planned.
But you were successful everywhere you went. You were all conference at Baker and at Avila. You were all freshman team at William Jewell. You scored over 1,500 points college career. So tack that onto those 1,685, I think it was. And you were a great free throw shooter. I mean, every year it seemed like, your last year, you were 80-some% free throw shooter at Truman. 500 free throws or something.
Yeah.
And the point was not the number itself. It was the number of times that you took the ball to the hole and knew that you were going to get blasted and probably land on the floor. I saw you on the floor a lot, Ainsley, because you would take it to the hole and twist your body and try to get the shot up as soft as you could get it. And that sometimes exposed you to get it and just hit right in the sternum. And then you just get up, brush yourself off, step up, and knock down the free throws. It's pretty admirable skill as a basketball coach. I appreciate it, but it took a toll.
It did. Yeah. I had a lot of injuries, but I wouldn't change the way that I played. I loved getting downhill. That was the motto from my dad. I mean, since I was a little girl, it was get to the hole because we weren't strong enough to shoot threes when we were in 5th grade. So yeah, that was one of my favorite things to do. I love driving. I love having a post to pass to in the paint too. And I love to shoot free throws. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was one of my favorite parts of the game. But yeah, I think I had some coaches that were really encouraging and loved how hard I would play. And so that was kind of like I'm going to play as hard as I can, and you're going to know that I'm playing as hard as I can because I'll do whatever it takes with my body to get what I need to do done. So, yeah.
Another statistic that they do not keep in college, but with this young lady, you could have kept this statistic, is how many times she stuck out her hand and slapped hands with the teammate. That had to be in the tens of thousands. You were always encouraging your teammates. You were always greeting them. If you were on the bench as they were coming off the floor, if you were coming off the floor for a break. And I just saw that throughout your high school and your college career. You just had that body language.
That's another thing that started when we were really young. My dad taught us about reminders per minute and positives per minute. And so that was definitely something that we all learned as a young group. And it was really fun because it grew into more than just like, oh, I have to high five my teammate. It ended up being chest bumps and like hugs and just all types of things. So yeah, we had a lot of fun with that.
I'll tell you another great thing about Ainsley too. And I understand part of this maybe because her dad and I were really good friends, but I think I announced every one of your games in high school in softball and in basketball. And that ends up being in the, couple hundred games or whatever. Home games is probably half that, but very few players would come over to me after the game and thank me for that. But Ainsley was always one of them. Would come over, hey, thank you for doing our game. Hey, thank you for announcing our game. And I'll always remember that she was a great player. But those little things too, like always get you right in the feels too when you make it all worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ainsley, talk about, there's an outcome. You play all this ball, you love it. You have all these different coaches, you meet all these people, but you were an academic honor student throughout. Where is it taking you? What are you doing with your young adult life? And what's Ainsley Tolson's ultimate academic goal and career goal?
Yeah. Well, first about going to all these different colleges, I just want to talk about the role that God played in my life. He took me all over the place. And I mean, it was my goal to meet as many people as I could. But the people that I met on my journey, I mean, they're just amazing. And I'm just so thankful that he took me on the path that he did take me on. The coaches that I got to play for, there's so many great people that I got to play with and play for. And I wish that I had 5 hours to sit here and talk about every single one of them. And it was just, when I look back, it makes me emotional just knowing like he had a hand in that and brought me to every one of those places that I was at. And whether it was a good basketball season or whether it was exactly what I wanted, it just didn't matter. I just met so many amazing people, and it was just a God thing. I just look back and I'm just like, man, he really knew what he was doing when he brought me here and there. So now I'm at Truman State still. I'm doing the grad program there for communication sciences and disorders. So my ultimate goal is to be a speech language pathologist, and I'm not sure if that means with kids yet or with adults. I can't decide what I like better, but I'm getting clinical rotations right now. So I'm getting my hands-on experience, which is a lot of fun. I love my professors. I love the school. It's a lot of fun for me to learn because I'm so excited about what I'm learning, and it's really interesting to me. But I definitely see coaching in my future too. And I'm not sure what level or where, but I love the game of basketball. And Jenny Croy is actually, I asked her if I could come in and shadow her this past winter break. And I actually only made it in one day because I kind of realized I'm a little burnt out right now with basketball. You do it your whole life and then you get a break and then you jump back in and it's like, why am I at the gym on my winter break? Like I should be home with my family. So, but she's been great and she's allowed me to kind of see what it's like a little bit at the college level. So definitely more exploring to be done there, but I definitely see coaching in my future too. So yeah.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
She'll be a great coach. I agree with almost every one of Ainsley's philosophies because they're exactly the same as mine.
She was a good student.
We go watch Kiefer play, and after the game, Dad wants to break it down with me, and I'm like, Dad, everything you say, I've already thought it. I've already said it to myself. Like, we don't need to break it down. We already think the same thing.
Love it. Love it. You want to close us out with something here, Chris?
Well, it's just been a great ride. I've got to experience it as a fan. My daughter got to play with Ainsley in 2 sports as an announcer for the games. Got to travel to watch her play college sports and just being a part of that. One of the greatest athletes that we haven't even really mentioned, the pantheon of Trenton athletes that she is now a part of with all of her accomplishments. But it's been a great ride, and I hope that it's telling these stories really inspires the next Ainsley Tolson, because that's kind of what it's all about, is who's gonna be the next great player to come through and use Ainsley's accomplishments and awards as their inspiration to be great.
I love that. I've appreciated watching Ainsley and her leadership, and she's just a great role model, and it's been a lot of fun talking about this. Thank you for coming in, and just wish you all the best. We are going to keep going with this thing and telling people stories. And we had a good one tonight. So thank you for listening to Show Me Sports Legacies.
Thoughts about the game. We were playing the defending state champion, and as Ainsley mentioned, their pitcher was a Division I pitcher, and their catcher was probably one of the top hitters in the state. And we managed to get all the way through 11 innings with 4 hits. We took them to 11 innings with 4 hits as a testament to our determination and our defense and our grit. And I don't think any of that ever gave up. That game was going to go one way or the other on some little thing. And honestly, in a game like that, it could have been 100 little things. As far as the role of the dad, I was just so proud of her. The fight, that she put in I don't regret any of it. I'm just proud of it. I think back on it, and sometimes it's hard because there was some controversial stuff in the game, but there always is in a big game like that. And you hate it when it comes down to